Welcome to Season 3 of Little Warriors, the podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Horan. On episode 2, I'm sitting down with Anne Hessman, also known as Epiphany Coaching. Anne is a neurodiversity parent coach with so much experience as a former primary school teacher, but also as a mother raising children with autism. This is an excellent listen. And before we start this episode, it's super important to thank Loopy Loo by Lidl for supporting Little Warriors, the podcast. Loopy Loo has always been a firm favourite in our household. You can check out the full Loopy Loo range online where there is more to value. From delicious organic carrot and herb weaning sticks to organic porridge in a sachet when you're on the go, of course affordable changing mats, and nappies from newborn right up to size 8, which we are still using overnight. So thanks again to Loopy Loo by Lidl. Okay, on this episode, I have a woman who is just a mine of information, and we're going to extract all of that information from her. She's a former primary school teacher. She is a life coach. She is a neurodiversity expert. She is raising children who are neurodiverse. Anne Hessman, Epiphany Coaching on Instagram if you need guidance on where to find her. But she is just excellent. I'm so thrilled to have you.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you.
But I mean it because you have you've experience on the ground in schools as a teacher. You're a mama bear to 3 children with different needs like all of our children have. But then you're also coaching and you've clients. So you're bringing a wealth of, you're not just going at it as we talked about systems.
Yes.
Or kind of under one thing. You're going at it with loads of different
from all sides,
attitudes.
I guess. Yeah, absolutely. Both, I was inside the system for so long and now I'm outside of it, and yet neurodiversity has always been part of my work and my job. More intensely so in the last few years, obviously, with my children's own identifications and then setting up Epiphany Coaching. But I worked in special education for 8 years before I left, so I was worked there.
So would that make you much more aware, more hyper aware when you had your own children of little things that you noticed that you were like, you know what, I know that my child probably needs to be assessed or is neurodiverse, than a parent who isn't, working within, because I think we're all a little bit like, what is and isn't,
what should I be looking for?
The norm, or what isn't, what should I be looking for behaviourally? Is my kid just really sensitive, hyper, bold, all these awful words that were attuned to neurodiversity, whereas as you were like in the system, came out of it new, yeah?
So, yes, I mean, I was in the system talking about neurodiversity, working with neurodivergent children, and it's very much an individual thing, certain things that regulate and support some children may not work for others at all, may trigger another child. For example, certain children might get a lot from, sensory play, shaving foam, paint, slime, all of that, and whereas other children may not be able to touch that. So that's just an example of, something. But it's so interesting you said, looking at it from both sides, when I was working as a teacher, that was, again, it was like you sat in front of the child or you were with the child in the classroom. But when my own son started, around kind of age 3, I started to notice he was always a much more sensitive child, like a very, what would you call, like a needy baby, that would, needed to be held more, needed to be, cuddled really tight. And around 3, I remember, because it was during kind of lockdown, and he was the happiest little boy at home, didn't have to go anywhere, but it was always when we went out in the world that, he became, quite anxious or crying or just wanting to hide in behind me all of the time. Anyway, it was when he, it became obvious that we needed to sort of explore the whole idea of autism with him. There's no comparison, because there's nothing like that fear that takes over. And that is what I see with parents now all of the time as well, that there's, you immediately jump to, the future. Oh my God, what are they going to be able to live by themselves?
What are we staring at?
Yeah, exactly. What's it going to look like? And of course, we're very much like a outcome-based society where we need to get to the outcome straight away. We need to get to the fix and the goal straight away. And we constantly look for external validation. So, oh my goodness, my child gets really upset in the supermarket because it's total sensory overwhelm. He cries, has a tantrum or a meltdown. People are looking at me and they're going to think I'm a bad mother because I can't control my child. But really what's happening is my child is neurodivergent. They're completely overstimulated and overwhelmed and dysregulated, and they need nothing but compassion in those moments. But our fears
are other people
take over of, oh my God, what will they think of me? and it's it's overwhelming.
But
and so we don't show up as we want to.
Like, is our child the mean kid or not the mean kid? And like, what would the parent think if she was mean to that kid today? And do those parents know that we're very good parents? And do the parents know that our kid is also excelling in maths and running? And you're correct. There's also the keeping up with the Joneses, the validation piece.
But do you see
as
the way
adults we do it.
It's achievement as well. So it's like, okay, my child is human, and they became dysregulated and they made a bad choice and were mean to your kid. Yeah. But as a child, like, they're children.
Yeah.
And then, like, but we as parents are like, oh God, but like, there's so many other parts to them as well. Please see the other parts to them. And that's very true of a neurodivergent child as well, because if you think about it, like with an autistic child or many neurodivergent children, what they present on the outside, you know, some of them don't speak. You say hello to an autistic child, they won't always say hello back. That doesn't mean that they're not able to say hello, that they don't understand you, that they don't have the capacity for conversations, but just in that moment, it doesn't feel quite safe for them to do that. But what's locked in here on the inside is probably kindness and compassion and creativity and, you know, empathy and intelligence, both emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence. You know, so much is locked inside. So, like, for parents of neurodivergent children who seek external validation, and who doesn't, let's call a spade in our society, we jump to the fix straight away. What can we do to get this out of our child?
We do that as
get our child to show their potential.
As adults as well. Like, how do we fix? Sometimes it's not that simple, right? Like, we have to figure these things out.
And it's so true. And parents come to me and they say, like, yeah, but what do I do? What do I do?
Give me the tools, Anne.
Yeah, exactly. Just, oh my God, like, even this morning a client was like, but can you just not tell me what to do? You know, and coaching isn't about telling you what to do. We cannot have the action without the awareness. So how do you get to the outcome without having the awareness that there's a problem here in the first place, or there's a challenge, or you know, something that needs to be worked on here in the first place? So we cannot have the action without the awareness. And the awareness might be, you know, my child is, you know, melting down, and I get really triggered by a child melting down, even though I know they're struggling, but I was told when I was younger to stop crying, or stop that now, or that's bold.
Cop on to yourself.
Cop on, or come on now, get on with it. You know, the stuff the children of the 80s and 90s were told. We were the children that were seen and not heard. You know, that's the, you know, and yet we know we want to raise our children differently, but by the same token, all of our own conditioning is locked there inside. So imagine now having the awareness that I get triggered by my child when they have a meltdown because I was taught that it was bold, or being loud and noisy like that is a bad thing. Expressing our emotions outwardly is a bad thing. So now I know this, so now I can stop myself. I can regulate myself. I can say, okay, I know that this triggers me, so I'm just going to take a breath even before I go to my child, and I can meet them with compassion instead of judgment or discipline,
or anger, like I'm so angry that you can't just get on with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Get on with it.
Instead of reactivity, as it were, you know?
You have 3 gorgeous children, and you said to me that they're neurodiverse in very different ways. So your daughter has, you know, her personality. Talk to me about how this all presented itself. Did you kind of just know? You're a mama and you've also worked in this field. Did you just know, or did it take a long time to get your children assessed and diagnosed?
So interesting. So I think I said to you that one of my sons was kind of a very clear-cut case of, you know, was he the highly sensitive child at the start, you know, or was there something? And I remember, like, being very aware of it kind of at age 3 or 4, and then it was when he went into junior infants that, like, it became very obvious when a child goes in among their peers, you know, and there's kind of social differences or communication differences, or you know, it could be academic differences at times, but with him it was kind of social and emotional differences. And you know, it was said to me or whatever, and I was like, no, it's time to explore it now. So it was when he was in senior infants that we explored it, and he got his diagnosis, you know. But
what was occurring within the house, or like what was there oversensitivities? Was there meltdowns? Was it not as simple as that? Like, what did you spot on? Because we're talking about normalcy and our children who are normal or perceived to be
typical.
Do you know what I mean? Neurotypical, who have their ups and downs, or the day doesn't always go to plan, but can kind of get on with it. And the children who are hypersensitive to all of this. So what was happening?
And like,
so it's important for parents
that word
to hear.
Hypersensitive, like, it's all right with us. Like, it was always, you know, my 2 other children would be off on their scooters dinners, and my son would be back beside us, just craving that safety, craving that trust, needing more, just needing that little bit more. And I always used to say that, he just needs that little bit more.
So they were getting on with it and he couldn't.
Yes, exactly. Or like they'd be climbing up to the highest climbing frame in the playground, and he'd be like, no, just much more cautious. Like his little nervous system is wired for kind of, danger, threat, just from day dot. Like it's just the way.
Oh, really? From the beginning you could say?
Very much so. First thing he did when he came into this world was cry, but it wasn't like, it was very much like, hold me, cry,
yes.
I need you, cry. And he was born at midnight. He was the first baby in Ireland of 2017.
Oh, no way.
And like I always say to him, like the whole world celebrated the moment you were born. I always say that to him, but like he just needed me the second he was born, so he was always just
lucky
needing
him
that.
Having you as a mama.
Oh, thank
you. Lucky him. That makes me want to cry. Because then I think of all the kids in the world who are like this little boy, don't have their needs met. That makes me want to cry.
Or don't. I know. Look at hello.
Like he's so lucky. He's literally got the best person for this life.
Like I suppose
God.
I do believe like I am his mum for a reason. Like I do believe that, and he was the reason. Like I always say to him, like there wouldn't be Epiphany Coaching if it wasn't for you. Like and like even though my other two children have subsequently been identified, but it was him.
A career.
Like I knew, like when he was like in the assessment process, that like I needed to do something different. I needed to do something it didn't evolve into helping parents for a while, but I needed to do something. And I've always been
an outlet as well. If you're in that,
I thought play therapy for a while, and then I was like, no. And then I've always been obsessed with human behaviour, so I thought, okay, hey, life coach, why not? But it sort of evolved into supporting parents, because to come back to my teaching days then, when like parents were sitting in front of me and they'd be like looking to me for the answers, like, oh, what do you think? Miss Connor's like, what do you think? And I'd be saying like, I'm saying, but hold on a second, I spend like 30 minutes a day with your child, or maybe even an hour through like SET or special ed, or the class teacher spends 6 hours a day with your child. You are with them
I just love that you have said this. Such Epiphany is such a brilliant name for what you do. Epiphany. It's like a eureka moment of like, the reality here is our teachers are so gorgeous and wonderful, our SETs, our SNAs, all of the people in a school, but they also have a function to educate, bring a child along a journey of a curriculum, right?
Yes, a curriculum.
Let's be really clear about that.
Yeah.
Box ticking, as we all know, and then also a lot of other like welfare, support, socialization, and just also minding our children from like A to Z. But then you go in for your parent teacher and you're like, why would that have occurred, and why did that kid say that? And she's having a lot of problems with those 3 other kids, and the play date didn't occur, and she didn't want to go to the party. And the teacher's like, I don't fucking know. Like I have 25 kids in the class and you want me to psychoanalyse, and I feel bad for them, because as parents we want to draw out more, when actually you're correct, we're with our children and we need to trust our instincts.
Exactly. So there's like a couple of problems here. Okay, so first of all, it's parents looking to the experts for answers for their children.
Of course.
And with that, because it's the external validation thing again. But what they don't realise is there is no greater expert on your child than you. You're nobody that's more of an expert on your child than you.
We don't feel that way though out in the world.
We don't,
we don't.
Because there's 2 things that parents say to me all the time. First of all, I just want someone to tell me what to do. And the second thing is, I'm so afraid of getting it wrong.
God, it's such a lonely road. And at the moment we're so overwhelmed with information overload. And then sensory overload, books, podcasts.
Yes, exactly. Your
Look
feed
at all of us
on Instagram is just
the memes.
5 things to do to help your neurodivergent
and it's
child.
to separate that to the reality, which is what do you think you need to do? You're at home with them. You're with them at the weekends or nights. I love that you've said that, because I do think we're always like, what would you do?
Yeah, what would you do? Exactly. And then you've got like, to just bring it back to teachers for a moment, and SNAs and people working inside the system, like they are so overloaded and oversubscribed with like every possible demand going. And I've often heard that, I've often heard teachers in staff rooms saying like, we're not OTs, we're not psychologists, we're not speech and language therapists, we're not social care workers, and they're not. But yet there's so much more to the education and the needs of a child than academia, and yet the curriculum is the first part in every single school. And yet a child cannot learn if they are not regulated.
Yes.
So like, just like to give you a visual, like, so we talk about like dysregulated children being not to learn. Like in terms of the brain, we have the brain stem at the bottom, and then so the brainstem at the bottom, which is where, like, you know, we regulate, where emotions are carried, the amygdala is there, and then on top of that we have the limbic system, where we feel everything, where our sensory system, you know, is located beside, and the top of that is the prefrontal cortex, where, you know, decision making, choices, learning, being able to access learning, where dopamine is created. So if down here, if the brainstem isn't working properly and it's overstimulated and overwhelmed, how on earth are we going to be able to access the prefrontal cortex of our brain? That's the neuroscience behind it.
Which is a huge challenge for many children in a school setting.
And teachers standing up at the top of the classroom trying to deliver a curriculum to a load of overwhelmed children. And there are children that are neurotypical and experience anxiety.
100%.
And then there are children who are neurodivergent, and like the whole environment is just danger to them. And I don't mean health and safety.
I know, but it's fight or flight,
like,
it's relationships, it's tensions, it's schoolwork.
I don't feel safe, I feel afraid.
Totally.
These are things that my child was saying to me all of the time. Was it anyone in the classroom's fault? Absolutely not. It was the pace of the day. It was the demands on his
pace of the day is such an interesting one. I'll go back to that for one sec, but I'll go back to what you're saying for one sec. But pace of the day is so interesting, Anne, because I've spoken to so many women, female experts and male psychologists, so many people about the pace, and when you change the pace of a child's day, how they behave. So the entrance of their day, much like us as adults, if we're like, oh, I'm late, how our whole day sits on that. Like, did you get out of bed the wrong side? That was just always
goes downhill from
100%.
there.
And I think children nowadays with two parents, dual incomes, you know, inflation and cost of living crisis and the stress that people are under, everything is And for children, they feed off that. And when you say pace in school, kids just feel like they're like going from Jimmy to Jimmy. It's just a lot, right?
And you, like, so again, a neurotypical child might be like, oh, but we normally do like Gaelga when we come in the morning, but now we're actually going down to the hall because there's Zumba on, you know, and they're, oh, okay. Now, you imagine a neurodivergent child who comes in and this sudden change happens, or even something simple as the teacher decides to change seats for the day.
That's a huge one.
I don't know. I have no predictability. I have no certainty. I don't know what's going to happen at the end. Why did that happen? Why did they do this to me? I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. Day ruined. And a neurodivergent child really finds change and transition so difficult, and finds it very hard to kind of let that go then. That can be stored as, I was literally going to say, that is, because trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens within you. So it's like that can be stored as trauma in the body.
Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens within you. That was so interesting, because I spoke to someone earlier on who said the trauma isn't actually the thing happening, it's how we are either unsupported or neglected in that moment. So the thing happens, awful things happen to us, this is life, right?
Yes.
But it's how that was dealt with.
How you were held in that. So the end of that sentence is, trauma is not what happens to you, trauma is what happens within you when you're left alone with what has happened to you.
Wow, okay. And lots of us have been, like, we're talking about rupture and repair, and those moments as parents, we don't always get it right, or it's a cranky day, or it's tired, or fight with a partner, and how we can go back. And I guess a lot of the time in other parenting models, or back in the day, that wasn't happening.
No,
right?
It wasn't happening, absolutely not. And I suppose, you know, my core belief, my core values around parenting is that, you know, like, children look for love often in the most unlovable ways. And how can I put my stuff aside? How can I regulate myself in that moment in order to show compassion to my child? Because the stuff that happened to me, my traumas, are not to say they're not my children's problems, but they're not my children's. So they don't need the effects of that on them. No. So it's like, you know, the meme of like the matches and taking a step back. If I can take a step back for a moment,
well, this isn't about me.
This isn't about my stuff at all. This is about them.
But often when you're in those moments of being tired and crying, it is about you.
Yeah, but it is about us, exactly. But what, like, so much of the work I do with parents is bringing their awareness to their triggers, triggered by their children, triggered by a conversation they had with a teacher, triggered by a conversation they had with an expert, be it TUSLA, CAMS, NCSE, the CDNT, all of these acronyms that we have to learn very quickly as neurodivergent parents, that, like, you know, they're triggered by something, somebody made them feel like a failure, somebody made them feel rejected, that they're not doing enough for their child. We go into those old stories of, I'm not good enough, oh God, how am I going to fix this, how am I going to do this? And it's like, we take that out on our children if we don't learn some kind of, or no, not learn, sorry, that's the wrong word. If we don't become aware of our own triggers, and then how do I regulate myself? And regulation can look like a breath. Regulation can look like turning away for a second. Regulation can look like jogging on the spot for 5 seconds. Regulation can look like I just need to leave for a second so I don't shout at you, and I'll come back in a minute. Those are all self-regulation tools. Does that make sense? Not always easy. Don't get me wrong.
I'm triggered by this.
I said, really?
No, in a positive way.
Okay.
Because I will find myself in those moments of like, what on earth is happening here? And I know, Anne, that I could feck off for a sec, that I can do the breathing. I'm a smart woman, I'm aware. But sometimes you just fucking can't.
Yes.
And it's like...
Where do you feel it in your body when
It's always my jaw. Like I'm always just like, for God's sake. Actually, all of this work you do at ground level, right, till they're a teenager, and putting in all of that does actually build kind, resilient children, because they go off feeling more whole than the kids who are broken.
Make a child feel better by making them feel bad about themselves.
Yeah, like, no, you're shit.
Yeah,
actually.
no, you shouldn't have done that now. Go be happy. But like, you know, it just blows my mind that it's such a radical concept that we would mind our children and actually realise how small they are and how young they are.
Makes me sad.
It's like, why do we want them to grow up and be resilient so quickly? Like, they're still figuring everything out.
And we are figuring everything out.
So we're learning on the job as well.
We're rubbish at a lot of it.
Like,
why would we expect children who aren't formed and their frontal cortex isn't formed to be okay?
Exactly. So they need the co-regulation until we like, they need that co-regulation until they're able to self-regulate.
Yeah.
And how can anyone self-regulate if they've never experienced the calm energy of somebody else, a safe person?
I find it hard when a parent, I find it hard, is critical of their kid, like is really not nice about their child. And we see it at the school gate, or we see it, and they're like, God, and he's an awful this. And you're like, oh my God.
But who's triggered there?
I know.
It's the
sad
parent,
though, isn't it?
It's the parent that is triggered by their child. And again, you can't have the action without the awareness. And it is sad, because there probably are people out there that will never kind of come to the realization or the awareness that I am triggered by my child, and I have these old beliefs based on my own upbringing, based on my conditioning, that, like, you know, oh, they should know better and they're being bold and they're 8 years of age, they should be able to do X, Y, and Z. Sure, children learn at all different times in different ways. So if they're giving out about their child, it's their stuff coming up, not their child's.
Of course it is.
You know?
You went about getting your children assessed. I presume you did go through the system. How easy and difficult and tricky? Was it actually fine? Were you totally okay with the outcome because it empowered you and you're fine with it? Were you like, tell me a bit about that journey.
So funny, like I'm going to talk about my son because he was our first child, and you were saying to me the two would scoot off and he could. So and it's like the ripping off the band-aid. Like the second and third time just doesn't. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's like the first time is like, whoo, your first foray into anything. So there's like a moment, you know, like all these in the years coming up to it, there was always like, is he autistic? Isn't he?
Oh, really?
Like, constantly, you know, kind of, again, looking outward, asking teachers, you know, what do you think? And, you know, or like at the time I was teaching in the school that he was in, and I would say to my colleagues, like, you tell me now if there was something, wouldn't you, you know? And, you know, I was really like not trusting myself at all. And anyway, he was assessed.
What
the
age
outcome
was
came back. He was 5 and a half.
Well done you, you're on it, like a hot potato. Like some people wait.
Yeah, well that's true, but like, I mean, it became kind of undeniable at that stage, you know, that sort of way. Like my daughter was 10, you know, but...
Why was it undeniable? Everything was a struggle?
Because everything was like, everything, it's too scary, I'm afraid, it's too scary, I can't, I don't know.
This is really important for parents,
you know,
listening.
yeah, absolutely,
so
it
things
is.
Were challenging
things were challenging, the cautiousness, everything felt like a threat, a lot of sensory stuff, didn't like the feeling of socks, didn't like the feeling of tags, hated the shower, just hated the shower. So there was an awful lot of, doesn't like shiny things like my rings, still to this day doesn't like keyrings, keys, cause them the shinies. We have to like pull our sleeves down or like hide my hands behind my back sometimes. Like when I had my nose pierced and I changed it to a ring once, and he was like, no, like just to kind of look at you, you know.
It upsets him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's change, but it's also like a shiny thing. It's just all sensory overwhelm for him.
So fascinating. Oh my God.
And the change and transition is really, really like significant in that as well, you know, like if parents are listening, that, you know, the change being extra cautious, like what we would call highly sensitive, maybe getting upset, like, and it's not just upset for 5 minutes. You know, where like one of my other son would be like, he'd fall down, he'd be like, cry, and then he'd be like, okay, I'm okay, and off he goes. But my little man, like he, the whole day, I mean, would not be able to come back from it at all. Like, just, this is my day ruined, like feels things on such a deep level. So these were all of the, also then like starting a task in school, kind of motor planning, all of that sort of stuff. And immediately would like opt out. I don't know how to do this. No, I'm out. I don't want to do this. You know, afraid of getting it wrong. And then obviously making social connections. Like, I always remember there was a group of boys in the class and they do this thing where they just all like run around each other and they go in. This was their way of saying good morning. They'd all just run around and play tag straight away. And he'd always hang back, you know, like until it was safe to do so, you know. So anyway, he went through the assessment process. He was identified or diagnosed, some people like to say identified now, as autistic. And I remember this feeling of elation. I was like, yes, finally we know. Oh, this is brilliant. No, now we can get the report and get the supports in place and all of this stuff. I'm going to get to the outcome straight away. I'm going to get to the outcome straight away. You know, I'm going to give the paperwork to the school and I'm going to get him loads of therapies and
it's going to be fixed.
Yeah, I'm going to just get on this now and get ahead of it. The amount of parents that come to me and go, I'm just going to get ahead of this. I'm like, oh God, bless and save us. I remember being there.
Never get ahead of
yeah, exactly, of a child that is growing and evolving and developing in every way, shape and form. So anyway, with that then, surge of energy into every possible organisation and read every book, listened to every podcast. And one thing that really, I remember this as a kind of a red letter moment. Like, my husband and I had listened to podcasts. We had conversations together of how we would speak to him about being autistic. Would we tell him? Would we not tell him? And then we were coming home. I was bringing the 3 kids home from school one day in the car, and my daughter said something about a little boy in her class who's autistic. And it just came out of me. I was like, oh, that's what you are as well. I just said to my little boy, I said, you're autistic as well. And he was like, what is that? And I was like, you know the way you're so good at maths and you remember numbers so well. And you have incredible memory, but then sometimes you feel very shy or you find it hard to talk to people. And that was the very, very bare bones of the explanation. And then my other son was like, what's it called again? And I was like, autistic. And he came up with something called autastic. He's like, it's like awesome and fantastic all mixed up together. They were 5, but for a long time in our house it was called being autastic. That's what he liked to call it. So elation told him, and then this plunged down into darkness for a while, you know, where you just, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the future, you know, just, was he going to be okay? Could I cope with seeing him being the child that was walking around the perimeter of the yard? The fear of all of those things, you know. And yet I have always had about him, and still continue to have to this day, this deep just knowing that everything's going to be okay. And then parents were coming into me, in my role as a set teacher, kind of saying, you know, what will we do? And should we get them diagnosed? And what do you think? And I started to share my experience with them as well. And, I strongly urged them to if you're a mother with a feeling or a father with a feeling, you know best, go and explore this. This is worthy of exploration, you know. Don't scratch that itch. That's terrible English, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of what
I find that so emotional, because you are obviously a beautiful mother and you have such a great soul and you're an empath and you get it and you love your kid. And when you said, you know, we got him assessed, you were elated, there's a kind of beauty in that, because you're like, I've got this. He's going to be fine because I'm incredible. And then you researched, and then yes, there was obviously the anticlimactic reality sets in. Mm-hmm. And I feel emotional thinking about your beautiful children, celebrating him and all that goes with it, and them discovering they're neurodiverse in very different ways. Yes. The peaks and troughs of it all, and you just sound so enlightened and empowered. But I also love how you're like, it's good, we've got this. It's not. Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
About your home life before and after, so BC and AD, you don't know he's 5, so you have a number of years with him, with your family, your husband, your life, you're prepping the day, they're going into, I presume it wasn't always easy, it was chaotic, it could be really hard and challenging. I presume you and your husband analysed him to death, your friend. Was there a slight change in everything once this was revealed, and is it better? So, you know, the whole phrase of the journey and the trusting the process and all of that, which are, you know, such
you know, they're thrown about everywhere and anywhere now. But like, this is such a journey, and I often talk to parents now about the marathon mindset, that like, this is not going away anytime soon. We're going to be on this journey for life, where there's going to be smooth parts and there's going to be bumpy parts. And certainly at home in our house, it has very much evolved into, you know, from what we thought or we expected our children would be doing at a certain age. So, you know, do they get their breakfast themselves? And the mornings are always the trickiest time in a house. Let's call a spade a spade. Oh. Mornings are bedtime, I would say. The bit where you're just, I'm ready for the day to be over now. Could you just please? You know, and also we're all trying to get out the door. So it's the high demand times of the day. So like, again, 3 years ago, we'd have been like, you know, like, you should be getting dressed yourself, and is he ever going to learn to put on his socks all by himself? What can we do to fix him putting on his socks himself? And as we've gone on, we've just been like it's going to be fine. He will be fine.
Wow.
Like, there are certain days he can put, like, there's the difference between capacity and capability. So there's days he can put on his socks, and there's days that he can't. That doesn't mean
has it changed everything for you as a couple and as a house?
Absolutely. Like, you know, our house now is a lot more lower demand. Wow. You know, so like, even say, like, in the morning now, like 2 out of 3 of my children get dressed down in the kitchen, and they have, like, we have toothbrushes in every bathroom, and, you know, it's everything that's close by. So you take away the demand of having to go back upstairs. You take away the demand of having to go find their uniforms. Everything is just there.
Yes.
And I can be sort of reminding them or giving them a nudge while I'm making the lunches or whatever. So it's just like, you know, flowing, not forcing. That's like a mantra that I live by. You know, like, if it's not flowing, then we kind of need to revisit it again and see what's not working here, or how can I make this easy? That's like another mantra of mine.
I think this is so important for anyone listening to this who fears the unknown, fears the autism label, fears neurodiversity, fears the world that's out there, and my kid's never going to get into college or have a girlfriend and boyfriend, or
will they ever to live by themselves?
Or they're going to. It's not. We've said this in a number of podcasts with Dr. Rebecca Quinn on as well. Yeah. It is not the end of your world or their world. It's the start of something completely different.
It's like I said to a client the other day, you know, again, very worried about the future for their child and just didn't really know how it was going to all work out. And, you know, I said, like, they are going to be fine. Whatever fine for them looks like, that's the piece we don't know. But like, the foundations are there, that they have parents that love them, that parents have taken action, parents that, you know, want to create trust and safety and connection for their child. That's all you need to do right now. Like, do we need to be thinking about 18-year-old Johnny when Johnny is 5?
But why would we do it with your typical children? We don't. I don't sit there and go, is my child going to get into Harvard? Is she going to be married, or is she going to be a lesbian? Like, I don't do that. So why is there such pressure when you have a child with neurodiversity?
Because, like, I know within the system, like, say in school, we'd be saying from like 4th class onwards, oh, you know, when they're in secondary school, this will be expected of them now, and we have to set them up for secondary school. And it's like, they're 9, they're 10. Just come back out of the future. We all need to just come back.
But I think as adults, we need to come back out of the future and what we expect of ourselves. Like 2026, what are we going to... It's like, God, we all just need to take a chill pill.
And lowering our expectations of ourselves does not equal a failure, or that you're unmotivated, or that you have no, no get up and go. Yeah, exactly. You know,
I love when people go, what did you do with your day? And you're like, well, I sat in the car for quite a long time after drop off, brought the dog. And it's like, I didn't box tick everything because I couldn't do it. Exactly. You set up Epiphany Coaching on the back of your, being in the education system, all your incredible work there, your children, I presume, as well. What do you do and help parents with day to day?
So, set up Epiphany Coaching in 2023, just after I qualified as a life coach. And then in the maybe August, September time, I qualified as a parent coach then on top of that. So I'm like a personal business and executive coach along with the parent coach. Thank you. And that was like such another journey. Like 50% of that course was personal development. So like, we were put through our paces. Like, you were like, you know, I won't say forced, but you like part of the course was obligation to look at yourself and do your, like, be coached yourself, and like an awful lot of stuff came up for me, and it was a lot of around my good girl conditioning. Like, I grew up in a very, like, in the west of Ireland, Catholic 1980s upbringing, very conservative. Education was a huge value. Like, my dad wasn't allowed to go to secondary school by his father, so he used to say, like, education is the lightest load you'll ever carry. So it was all like, I was carrying all of that with me. And you know, there's been so much unlearning for me rather than learning in this parenting journey. Like, and all of it. So when I set up parents...
It's letting the shackles kind of free.
Exactly. So as I let go more and more with things that are not aligned with me, I am finding myself able to hold so much more space for parents now, because I get it. I understand. They're coming to me with stuff and I'm like...
What do they come? What is the norm for you if I'm booking you to... What am I usually coming to you with?
Well, you're mostly going to book me because, you have something going on with your child in school.
Behavioural issues?
No. Say like, I've had a meeting with this teacher and they said that my child is not allowed to come in late in the morning, or we're not allowed to have reduced days, or we need to have recommendations from an expert's report. And like, I know that my child needs a movement break, but I actually can't afford an OT assessment at the moment. So I'm assisting them with their voice.
Okay.
So like, a lot of us don't have the language to advocate. A lot of us don't have the language from inside the system.
Oh, this is fascinating. So you're kind of like you're advocating for parents.
Oh God, yeah.
So you're on the other side of the field.
So parents, like, again, I've had the privilege of being inside the system, so I know what language to use from both sides of the fence. But like, again, you're talking about your most precious thing in the world. So you're going to talk about it, you're going to get emotional, and your child, you're hurting for your child, and you feel like your child isn't being treated or given the correct amount of supports. I'm supporting parents with going in and not sitting there bawling, crying in a meeting. I'm supporting them with finding their voice, saying, no, I am the expert on my child. There's no report in the land that will know more about my child than me.
Wow.
And so, like, again, our conditioning, Rebecca, and our society is set up to look to the experts for validation. So we look to the teacher, we look to the OT, we look to the psychologist, we look to all these.
100%.
And everybody has their place. Please, I'm not dissing anybody. And I have, like, my children have had the privilege of working with amazing experts. But there's nobody that knows them better than me.
Yeah, but we've lost a lot of confidence
in ourselves.
Maybe not in our kind of... We weren't given
it to begin with.
We weren't given it. So we've lost confidence in what we're doing. We go back and forth and we read. But I do love this gut instinct, this gut feeling. Something isn't right and something isn't...
A mother with a feeling.
Yeah, but we're not trying to fix it either. We're trying to... You seem to love what you do.
Oh, I love what I do.
And you're very joyful. Like, I met you outside before coming in. I'm like, this is a gal who likes what she does.
Oh, I do. I do. Like, yeah, and I love, like, there's nothing more, like when I was teaching, now coming up towards the end, okay, I, like, had the Sunday night fear. I would have, like, a pain in the pit of my stomach about going in. And since I started Epiphany Coaching, like, that's not a thing at all anymore. I will skip up the stairs into my office in the morning. I love having the bit of crack with my clients at the start, like, and we'll always chat about this, that, and the other. And then, then we get down to it, But, like, any client I have, like, I always say, like, could you give me a word of how you're feeling at the end of the session? Like, the majority of the time, it's like lighter, clearer, happier. I feel like I have a direction now. Isn't that what parents want? And yet, I haven't told them what to do at all.
You are
questioning.
A godsend. I could talk to you for hours, and like, your page is so much great information on it, not preachy. Like you've just said, you're not lecturing people, you're not. It's an empowerment and I guess a movement, and
it is a movement,
advocacy.
Yeah. And I do have a membership, which it's really funny that, like, you say about the movement there. Like, my membership is almost a movement. It's like parents, like, we talk about women bigging each other up and women supporting women in different spaces, and in the space we're in, we have, like, over 50 like parents of neurodivergent children. They're all mothers. We're literally supporting each other. Like, we've talked about being raw in front of each other. Our family don't get it, our friends don't get it, but we give each other permission to be real and raw about our journey, because there's no journey like it. And if you're not living it, I don't think anyone would get it. So yeah, it's a lovely, lovely space. And movement is a great word for it. I love that. I'm going to use that in the future.
You're incredibly inspiring.
Anne
Hessman, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You have to follow Epiphany Coaching. I found it and I was like, thank you so much.
I'll keep an eye. Thank you so much.